I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, move over Don Corleone. There's a new mob boss in town. His name is Tony DeFeo. He is a character in the book, The Mafia Don of the U.S.A. It is a fantastic novel written by Sam Manzano, and we are delighted to have Sam join us here today on Spotlight. Sam, thanks so much for being our guest.
Thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. This is quite a story. It reads very, very real. For the folks at home, let's start with the beginning, which is, what's the story all about?
I would say it is the rebirth of the American Mafia. Why do I consider it the rebirth? Because since Don Corleone back in 1972, the Mafia has been out of the screen, the big screen, and out of action in a sense, since John Gotti was sent to jail. You haven't heard nothing about the American Mafia, which is part of our society since the first picture was made in 1930 by Edward G. Robinson, Little Caesar. And it's always been part of our lives. The American society enjoys it. And it is real life, a real intrigue, real people with real, the difference is it's a crime organization. Gradually, it's been phased out completely. I just sat down one day and decided to go back into life, relive the American Mafia, and how my friend Tony DeFeo has to pop up again and retake what was taken away from the Mafia by the Russian organizations, Jamaicans, the Venezuelans, and different crime organizations that moved in after all this federal government hit the Mafia very hard back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And I just relived it. I say it's the rebirth of the Mafia for the American society.
Absolutely.
We need something.
You seem to know a lot about the mob. Was it research? Tell me how you learned so much about the Mafia.
I was brought up in New York City. That itself is the birthplace of the American Mafia back in 1916, approximately on Mulberry Street, Little Italy, which does not exist no more. The one that I knew, the one that lives now is very different. I understand. I haven't seen it for several years, but I did do research. Correct.
The Mulberry Street, as you mentioned, it is still an Italian neighborhood. They have Italian restaurants and stuff, but I don't think it's the epicenter of the mob like it used to be.
No, not by a long shot. According to people that have gone down there, it's very sophisticated now, expensive and everything. And that elegance of the Italian traditions, all St. Gennaro feast, for example, I assume it doesn't exist anymore. Just to see that feast is fantastic. And the same thing has happened to the American Mafia. It has disappeared. It's been replaced by what? Star Wars and different fantasies. But this is really our society. It covers the whole nation. And Tony DeFeo is the man that brings back the Mafia, like he says at the end of the book. Let's retake what's ours from all these foreign organizations that have moved in. At one time, we take the Russian Mafia. There was a small organization back in 1970. At that I did check out. But then gradually the Mafia, American Mafia, was gradually moved out by the federal government, arresting all these. Since Joe Fallaci, the famous Fallaci papers, the first Mafia to speak and break the silent code. Since then, others have spoken. Consequence, the federal government hit them very hard. And gradually, all these foreign crime organizations moved in to what once everything was American Mafia, all the way, well, from coast to coast. And in my book, I'm reliving that, and the first book entitled is being organized by Tony DeFeo. He's brought back because he's not in the city. The old man is sent to jail, the old Don, and this organization in the city, in the country itself. That's why I emphasize it's the rebirth of the American Mafia, getting back what they had at one time and has been taken away from them. I'm sure our society will enjoy it. They're going to live it again like they lived all those famous films that we had in the past. Like I said, the first one back in 1930, then the famous Godfather, and before that, many more that really enjoyed our lives. And how can I say, I have memories of those era back in the 50s and the 60s when I was growing up in New York City.
You know, it's funny because the mafia obviously is a crime organization, but in some ways they're better than the alternatives. They only really wreaked havoc on people that they were doing business with directly. There was a code of ethics. Today, the criminality and the criminals are kind of out of hand. They almost need a Tony DeFeo to make things run a little more smoothly and a little less violently.
To put the house in order, shall we
Exactly.
say, respect, even though it's crime, but you have to have order, a code. You can't bully the people just because you're in that organization. The mafia had that code, and they had for many years. It was against the law, but they ran a very tight ship because it's very, very well organized, excuse me, by the famous Tony, what was his name? Lucky Luciano.
Right.
He was the first Godfather, we could say. And there was also Albert Anastasia. He was another man in that era. And many, many other of them. But I believe this is the rebirth, and I emphasize in that word, the rebirth, because it will bring memory to a lot of people, to the new generation that don't know what the mafia is. It's
Right.
something else very new for them. Star Wars, they're going to see real people organized, working against the law, but there's a lot of people that are working against the law, and they're not a crime.
Yeah, absolutely. If this was going to be a movie, who would you cast as Tony DeFeo?
Mark Wahlberg.
Wow. He's a pretty
That
powerful actor.
that gentleman, when I created this man, Tony DeFeo, and I always thought of this gentleman, Mark Wahlberg, since I saw the first film, the
Italian Job, maybe?
Italian Job, I think it was. I remember
Yeah.
exactly, but he played fantastic. I always remembered him, and that's in the part of Tony DeFeo and his best and loyal friend, Joe Pagano, or Jason's with the
Jason Statham.
Statham. That's his
Yeah,
last name. Right?
absolutely.
Those are the two characters. As I wrote the book, I've held both of these gentlemen in my mind. I created them to their image, the way they act, the way they talk,
Right.
and they fit right into those places.
Wonderful.
I did more homework, but that I'll leave for later. Can't put everything on that.
Exactly.
But I believe this is good.
How long have you been out of New York City, Sam?
I left New York City back in 1969.
Wow.
I've
And
been
you
then
you relocated to Puerto Rico then, or where did you go?
I relocated to Puerto Rico, and I started to work in insurance, worked in the banking industry,
Mm.
worked with AT&T when they were owners down here of our phone company. But I've always kept track of New York City. I kept track of everything in the United States, be it crime or politics and everything. I was raised there, and I think like an American citizen from New York City. You don't just wash that off because you moved out. It's in your blood.
Absolutely. What neighborhood of New York were you raised in?
I was raised in Chelsea district
Okay.
on the west side, 26th Street, 8th and 9th. That was Irish.
Right.
That was Irish mafia.
Gotcha. Yeah,
And then I was
there's gangs, the gangs of New York. There's all gangs
That's
in New York,
correct.
particularly in that era. There were, Spanish gangs, Irish gangs, Italian gangs, and it kind of added to the flavor of New York. Now, are you Italian American?
No, I'm Puerto Rican.
Oh, okay.
What I looked up, funny thing, I started looking up my last name. My ancestors came from Spain.
Hmm.
Okay. But I'm a very curious man. I love to read history and so forth. So I kept on looking and looking and looking. And I found out that I traced my name Manzano outside of Venice, and there is a town or a city by the name of Manzano up in Italy. And
Yeah.
in the era, I followed my roots, shall we say.
Interesting. I thought the Italian American connection might be your interest in the mafia, but it's an interesting organization, regardless of your ethnicity, that's for sure. And you have more books coming out about Tony DeFeo?
Yes, it's a three. There should be three books. The second book is already started. I was delayed due to personal situation, but everything is in my mind.
Yeah,
The whole story from first to the end.
wonderful.
And I believe Tony DeFeo will bring a new blood, a new figure, just like Don Corleone did it with The Godfather. And if it comes a film and Mark is the actor, I'm sure it will be a big hit. I'm sure it
I
will be
think
a
so too.
sensational.
I think he would bring like an energy to the role that somebody like De Niro doesn't have anymore. De Niro's kind of aged out of that role, but somebody who's younger, more vital, like Mark Wahlberg, I think would bring a lot to the film.
Well, Mark Wahlberg fits to me. He fits perfect because he can be a funny man in the film.
Mm-hmm.
He can be very dramatic, but he can also be very firm and cold.
Mm.
And Tony DeFeo is that firm. And he always says, I never repeat anything twice. That's just one of the famous phrases that he uses.
Yeah.
I studied dramatic arts for about 4 years with Telly Savalas. That's
Hmm.
why I love acting. I love everything I do. I really enjoy it. And that's why, based on that acting experience that I've had, that I followed, I picked this gentleman for that part. And Jason for Sam, I just picked him out of the blues. I knew who they were the moment I started to write this book. And I hope,
Well,
God willing, that everything falls in for them.
yeah. Well, I think hopefully we catch their ears here today because I think they would love to play these roles of Tony and Joe. They're amazing roles. They're very lifelike. They're multidimensional. And I think two powerful men like Jason Statham and Mark Wahlberg would be perfect. What are your favorite mafia movies? Is it Godfather 1, 2, 3, The Irishman, Goodfellas? What do you like?
The Goodfellas. The Goodfellas showed the strict code there, the silence. The Goodfellas is one of the best films that was made, I believe.
Yeah.
And
It
then you
is
got the
very,
old
very
film, then got the other era, the 30s and the 40s, where you had these George Raft, Humphrey Bogart. All of these characters are great actors, like fantastic uh, mobster films, and never forget James Cagney from that era. I really enjoyed it. But the Goodfellas, those were the best. The fantastic. Let's put it that way.
right, right. And Casino's quite good as well with Robert De Niro as the mob boss and Pesci as the crazy, hot-headed, ball of temper, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Robert De Niro is fantastic, and like you said, he had his era. Was fantastic. He still is fantastic, but like he's no longer that figure for crime figures like in the past.
Tell me about a little bit of the studying you did with Telly Savalas. Were you guys at the same acting class or something together?
No, no. Telly Savalas was a dramatic art teacher before he became an actor.
Hmm.
He was our teacher as dramatic art. He had a made a film with David Susskind on TV. I believe it was Channel 4, going back to 1958. And he played the part of the Mafia Don with a very short, very one night series, 2 hours or 3 hours, I think it was.
Hmm.
And from there, I lost my teacher and he went to Hollywood. Because I never heard from him then. After that, he just disappeared from the as a professor, and he ended up. I tried to contact him when I went back to New York City. And
Hmm.
that was a funny thing because as a student, I was very close to him. I enjoyed talking to him, and I tried to reach him back in 1968, and I missed him by one day. I never forget that. When I finally located, it was difficult. The secretary tells me, you missed him by one day because he left yesterday to make the film with Omar Sharif in Hungary,
Wow.
the famous. But life, I don't regret it though, because if I had met him, reached him, that is, and maybe expressed what I had in my mind and so forth, I never would have got married, had children, and so
Right.
forth. So I don't regret nothing one bit.
Yeah, he became a big star. I mean, Kojak is such a memorable character, certainly a part of pop culture history for sure.
That isn't, he was an actor. He could be a comedian, he could be dramatic, anything like in Dirty Dozen, he was
Yeah,
fantastic. The
yeah.
role he played there as a religious fanatic was incredible. The same thing with with Omar Sharif
Hmm.
when he made the film for then Genghis Khan. I believe it was Genghis Khan, but he played the right hand man for Omar Sharif also, and the he played also with Kirk Douglas and Tony Curtis in Spartacus.
Mm,
Now he
yeah,
was a wonderful actor. He was a wonderful he was outstanding with Kojak,
yeah,
but he had many credits as a great film actor, in my opinion.
absolutely, absolutely. I remember him with that Tootsie Pop saying, "Who loves you, baby?" Right?
Oh yes, with Kojak always, and
Yeah,
he had another. He had an expression.
he used to say, "Who loves you?"
No, he'd say Telly. He had a way of saluting you, saying hello, but as a love gesture, like you're lucky, like he gave you luck. I
Right.
remember he had that little gesture, but he
Yeah,
was fantastic, man. Just like Lee Marvin and so forth, great actors we had in the past. Even though we have a new generation coming up now,
exactly, exactly. How long did it take you to write this book? I know it was in your brain first. You have the whole story in your head, but putting it down on paper, what was that process like for you?
I started going back to my youth, the things that happened in New York City. Right? I still remember like today when they killed Alberto Anastasia on Parkside Hotel. To me, it was like yesterday. And then I sat down and as I lived on Mulberry Street, also I relived that. And that's going back into the past and that I figured fiction with certain facts of life, real things that happen. The waterfront, everything little like a chess game. I love to play chess. I took every little piece and I put them together gradually. And there is something I learned that as you start to write, it's a bug. It hits you and you get there. It's like a machine. Just continue writing there and the characters pop up on you and your mind is really going full ahead. And then the fiction that I checked out on the Russians and the Albanians and so forth. And that's how I put the chess that game together
Hmm.
of how to get my all this organization back that belongs to us. It took some time, it took about 2 years to do the first book. And the second book has been delayed due to personal situations.
Hmm. Well, I'm sure your fans can't wait for the second book to come. The first book is absolutely terrific. I think if you came back to New York, you'd be surprised. A lot has changed, but a lot is still the same. You know, Mulberry Street, like I said, it's different, but it's the same. I've been going there for, I don't know, 4 or 5 decades now. And that's kind of what's nice about New York City is that it's kind of timeless, you know?
I was checking about a restaurant in New York City because I hope to be going to New York City in the near future. And I really miss the big city there. But I know that everything that I knew does no longer exist.
Right.
It's something completely different for me. So
Yeah.
I'll be needing a guide to help me go around the city again.
I don't
No,
know. My dad was raised on William Street. So he used to bring me, he knew the city like the back of his hand. So I learned the city pretty well myself. And a lot of the neighborhoods are still the same. And I bet you there's a couple of pubs that are still there from back in the day when you used to hang out there, Sam.
well, let's looking forward to it because I intend to return in the future.
That's
Really looking
wonderful.
forward.
That's wonderful. So it took you about 2 years to write the Mafia Don of the USA?
Yes, because I had different situations that occurred, and I stopped and I put it aside, and then like the present. But how can I say it? I had to go real deep in there to look for a lot of things, small details about the book,
Hmm.
and really enjoying it as a writing and living a lot of episodes. Like I emphasize, some are real, some are fiction. I had to make a combination to be very careful how I was writing it and putting each piece together. Tony DeFeo is based in a sense on a human being that did exist, a real crime, and he's God rest his soul already.
Yeah.
But he also was part of the person that I started to write there. Tony DeFeo was a real man, but not with the name.
Hmm. I think you should send a copy to Martin Scorsese. I think he needs to make one last good mafia film.
Well, the idea is very good. I think I'll consider it very well.
Yeah,
Not a bad idea. I will
yeah.
try then.
Because I think The Irishman was going to be his last big mafia film, but did you see The Irishman?
No, no, I've seen it.
Okay. It's good, but it's not, I think, in the same caliber as some of his other films. So I think The Mafia Don of the USA, a story about Tony DeFeo and his buddy Joe Pagano, I think that would be his masterpiece. What say you, Sam?
I say I'll take it for him to consider it, and I'll be more than available.
Awesome, awesome. The name of the
For
book is The Mafia Don of the USA. It is written by Sam Manzano. You can get it online. It's a wonderful book. It'll transport you back to a different era in many ways with a new mob boss who kind of makes Don Corleone seem not so tough. That's right. Tony DeFeo is the new guy in the mob, the new mob boss, and his story is just wonderful. Sam Manzano, thank you so much for your time today on Spotlight.
Thank you very much for your attention on me.
My pleasure. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.